This documentary alone showed why nobody can compare or compete or top Michael Jackson's influence or impact back then, not now, not ever. If it wasn't for Tony, oh. What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for tuning back in. I'm back with another video, and this is going to be a video that most of y'all might be surprised about. Maybe some of y'all won't. But if you look at my profile picture, you see it's Michael Jackson. I'm always a Michael Jackson fan. I've always been a Michael Jackson fan. But, you know, over the time, I've gotten into other things, other artists, you know, with Aaliyah, and then doing different videos. And ever since 2009, I done watched every Michael Jackson documentary, every Michael Jackson special, BET, MTV, VH1, all the DVDs, all the live concerts, live tours, every interview. I've became like a Michael Jackson almost historian, basically, watching everything that he has ever done, you know. And with this Thriller 40 documentary, I was like, wow, I seen it like a month ago, and I was excited for it. 40 years since Thriller, the biggest selling album, the most successful album of all time. And even back then, you can see that picture I have of Michael Jackson on the wall. Even back in high school, I was known to be a huge Michael Jackson fan. I always dressed up like him for like Celebrity Day, Halloween, and one of my friends got me that for Christmas, I think, and I was like, a Michael Jackson picture thing? What am I gonna do with this? Put it on the wall, right? So my Michael Jackson fandom, or I guess you can say my Michael Jackson appreciation, has been over 14 years at this point. So with this Thriller 40 documentary, I felt like this would be something special for the fans. And I know there's been some controversy with his estate and the choices they make, but compared to Whitney Houston's, who they just sign off on anything and she got like 10 movies, 10 documentaries, and all these type of collaborations that just don't make no sense, and versus Aaliyah, who you gotta wait 3 years just for one thing, or like 10 t-shirts, I feel like Michael Jackson's estate, it's not in the best place it could be, but it's Michael Jackson. His name is going to carry his legacy itself, you know. So with this video, I wanted to give my review on the documentary and try to make this like a free think, a free talk. If y'all seen the documentary, I want y'all to give y'all opinions down below. Even if you haven't seen the documentary, just leave your thoughts down below on the whole Thriller project, the whole Thriller experience, the whole Thriller story. What were your favorite songs? What were your favorite music videos? Like, do you think Thriller was his best album? I'm going to talk about all of that. And then I'm also going to talk about some things with the documentary that I wish they would have added in. I liked it. As an overall thing, like my consensus of the documentary, I enjoyed it. And I could tell a documentary is really good when it moves me, or when certain points of the documentary gives you like goosebumps. That's why I'm like, wow, like, okay, I'm really enjoying this. And then I'm looking into it, I'm checking the time. I'm like, oh, 40 minutes have passed already? When you're really into a documentary, you don't realize how much time has passed watching it. That's when you know. When you're watching it and it gets boring and you get tired and you be like, oh my God, it's an hour left. That's when I was like, oh. But I was just, and the thing is, like I said with Michael Jackson, I knew like 90% of this, but they just repackaged this, you know, presented it in a new way, with new interviewing new people and stuff. But most of the stuff I already knew, but I like the way they presented it in this Thriller 40, Showtime, Paramount Plus type of way. Of course, they had to start this documentary off with the humble beginnings, right? They all lived in Gary, Indiana, in that one house, the whole family, and the whole thing of that jump from living just above the poverty line to becoming one of the most successful, wealthy black families in the entertainment industry. And with that, it's just like, wow, that itself is inspiring. You know, seeing what they came from to seeing what they became, and, you know, the legacy they have all these years later. And Michael Jackson being the front man, being so young, doing this, doing that, and how he basically carried the group, he carried the family. Like, without Michael Jackson being the front man for the Jackson 5, it was like, would they have been so successful? Honestly, you could tell, no, right? Just the same thing with a lot of other groups. You know, a lot of people like to say, oh, it's favoritism, or it's this, or it's that. But some groups need a leader. Some groups need that lead singer, because without them, they would not have become so successful. And I liked how this was about Thriller 40, but you have to have context, which led to Thriller. The context what led to Michael Jackson having this attitude of like, I'm not just that little kid from Jackson 5 no more. I'm not just the front runner with my brothers singing and dancing and spinning, doing the robot. No, like, I'm gonna be the most successful artist of all time. He ingrained that in his head, and his spirit, and his dances, and his singing, and his songwriting, and his producing, and it happened. But another part of that is, before that, I liked how they dove into that story of him going through puberty, where that's another thing. It was that section of his life, that 17, 18, 19 era where, you go through puberty and your face breaks out and you get a little older, and, your face, your nose might get bigger, whatever. You don't look the same when you was 10 and 11. And I always remember the story where he said they was in an airport or something, and the lady came up to them, the Jackson 5, and was like, "Where's Michael? Where's little Michael?" Mind you, Michael Jackson was like 16, 17 at this point, and they was like, "Oh, he's right there." And when she looked at him, she was like, ugh. Like, she was just so disgusted by how he looked. And certain things like that, I can only imagine, right? But I can just think about certain things like that stay with you. No matter you, Michael Jackson, Jackson 5, but that one experience from like some random lady in the airport, that stayed with him. Because I remember 2001, he did that Martin Bashir documentary. He talked about that. So that was like over 30 years ago. He still remembered that one experience with that one random lady, because of how it made him feel like so ugly, and like, oh, I'm not that little cute boy anymore. Oh, I'm not attractive anymore. Like, what am I gonna do? So I was like, wow. All of this is building up to that determination, that drive he had to become one of the most successful artists of all time. Not just being the little boy from the Jackson 5 that grew up and became sort of an afterthought, or like you were cuter when you were younger, but I don't want to hear from you now. I don't want to look at you now. No, Michael Jackson still did his stuff that we had to do. Still continued to push the envelope even further and further, working with this one, working with that one, helming together a team that will make him one of the most successful artists of all time. Of course, with his talent, his singing ability, his dancing ability. But sometimes you think about it, with these projects, with these albums, with these songs, with these music videos, it's him having all these influences and combining them into one. He didn't even talk about that. With his music videos, with his performances, with his outfits, he would take from this, take from that, from a movie, from this artist, from this video, and combine it all into one. That dance move he might have saw in a park somewhere, he took all of that and combined it into one. He put his own spin on it, like literally put his own spin on it. Then we get into the Off the Wall era, which was like that post-disco era, which was like a combination of like, it was post-disco, but you still had to have those disco influences. 1979, like, it was right on the cusp of disco dying off, but you still had to have that funk. Like, it was more funk, soul, pop, R&B all mixed together. And Off the Wall was a perfect helm of that. It was a perfect combination of that. But what happened? Even with those hits like Rock With You, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, Michael Jackson felt like he didn't get his just due. With Off the Wall, Michael Jackson was 21, 22 at the time. And he had all these hits, number one hits, all these dance, funk, pop hits. But he only won like 1 Grammy for that album, I think. And this is the thing where I like how, a lot of artists nowadays like to be like, oh, the awards don't matter, this don't matter. When you in this industry, especially as a black artist, especially back then, sometimes that stuff did matter. Like, you want to make great music, you want to make great art, you want to connect with the fans, but at the end of the day, I like how they was transparent with how winning Grammys, going number one, being successful did matter. It was important to Michael Jackson. A lot of artists nowadays, it don't matter, I don't care. No, it does matter. In the grand scheme of things, you in this industry, you want to be successful. Like, let's not paint it to be like, oh, I do it for the love of it. Yeah, but I wouldn't mind a number one hit. I wouldn't mind a Grammy. No, I wouldn't mind having the biggest selling album of all time. Like, let's not pretend like that's not something any artist in the industry would want. But with that, Michael Jackson, that drove him even more, even harder to be like, oh wow, okay, they think I'm a game. One Grammy? This is where we get into the creation and the magic and the planning, the development of the Thriller album. And I like how they would go through each song and they interview like Mary J. Blige and Usher and Tony, Raphael Saadiq, and some of the producers and percussionists and arrangers he worked with, and how they just, and the background singers, they talked about his process, his work ethic, and how he was just like almost like a human instrument with the way he could just beatbox, catch the rhythms, come up with melodies, and write songs just like that, come up with these ideas, video treatments. Of course, he had help along the way, but a bulk of this was his own ideas, his own work, his own talent. And did y'all see that new rare footage they had of Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson recording The Girl Is Mine? And I'm like, wow, people talked about this too. Over 40 years, y'all had this footage for over 40 years. Y'all just now showing it. What I would have loved in this documentary is as they went through each song or each of the big hits like Beat It, Billie Jean, Thriller, they would have showed footage of him recording each of those songs. I know he got the footage. You rarely see that footage, right? You see him and Quincy Jones in the studio, oh, PYT, want to be starting something. Like, show us the footage of him recording these songs, you know? Like, that would have been, like, amazing. You know, we heard the acapellas, we heard the demos, but I wanted to see the footage of him. Something about seeing my favorite artists, or something about seeing artists in the studio recording the songs, recording some of their biggest hits, whether it was a few years ago, decades ago, it's something like nostalgic about it. Even if I wasn't born at that time, it's something magical, something nostalgic about seeing the song come together in time, in that moment. Having them do take after take, or doing something, be like, oh, I don't like that, let me do that again. Or having a producer or whoever outside the thing, like, okay, do it one more time. Or, I don't know, you know, or them practicing the octaves of, okay, one more time. Or them laughing. Something about that whole process of them recording these big hits is so intriguing to me. And I wish they would have showed that more. They showed that red clip of him and Paul McCartney, but I'm like, I want to see that for Billie Jean. I want to see that for Beat It. I want to see that for PYT, you know? And then they say Janet Jackson, I think even LaToya Jackson did the background vocals for PYT. How amazing would that have been if they had that footage of Janet singing background vocals while Michael Jackson was doing the lead? Like, you know what I'm saying? That would have been amazing. With this documentary, I was surprised that they didn't interview people that I expected. This is Thriller, 40 years later. They didn't interview, from what I remember, I didn't see none of his family. Like, I couldn't get none of his brothers, Janet, like, I couldn't get none of his family to come and do the interview. Quincy Jones, I know he be acting weird now. So him coming to do this interview was like, and then you seen one Quincy Jones interview about Thriller, you didn't see them all. He said the same thing every time. I like how they got John Landis when they did the Thriller music video. He was talking about that. But the thing with John Landis is, I'm like, when they said, oh, they told him, oh, Michael Jackson called him, he wanted to do a video. He was like, oh, Michael Jackson from the Jackson 5? I'm like, 1982, 1983, you only knew Michael Jackson from the Jackson 5? Like, I'm pretty sure. That's the thing with, I know sometimes maybe he wasn't into like black artists or black music like that, but you mean to tell me in 1983, before Michael Jackson called you to do this video, you only remember Michael Jackson from the Jackson 5? Like Billie Jean and Beat It wasn't out? You know, I'm just like, that was a little, maybe the timeline was off the way he was describing it, but he made it seem like before Michael Jackson called him, he only knew him from the Jackson 5. Like, oh, Little Michael from the Jackson 5? Mind you, this is 1983. What? That threw me off a little bit, but I'm like, maybe that's the way they edited it. Another thing I love is how they talked about that Motown performance. And like I said, you seen one documentary, you seen them all. That's always a key moment when he did that performance, because of course it was a Motown anniversary. He had to come with his brothers, do the Jackson 5 songs, but then he had to, okay, all right, I like the new stuff. Shoot him off the stage, like, thank you, okay. Then he took that hat, he had that blouse, the socks, the glove, and he went to work. And that was like the birth of the icon of Michael Jackson. Of course we knew Michael Jackson. Of course everybody in the audience knew Michael Jackson. People at home knew Michael Jackson. But him doing that was like his first time showing the glove, showing the move, showing the moonwalk, showing the essence of Michael Jackson that we know 40 years later. You dress up for Michael Jackson for Halloween, you got the glove, you got the hat, you got this, you got that, you got the moves, you got the hip thrusts, you got the point, the kick, the toe stands, the moonwalk, jerry curls. That whole look, that whole performance, that whole aesthetic of watching him from your house or watching him live in the audience, that's when people got to see the birth of the iconic powerhouse, megastar, phenomenon, Michael Jackson, right? And I love how they said that everybody in the audience was just in a trance when he was performing. And of course, I liked how they had more behind the scenes stories, and you got to really hear Michael Jackson be transparent especially with the Thriller music video, and how we all knew this, most of us knew this. MTV was so centered on playing white rock stars, they didn't even want to play Michael Jackson, because like again before, it was just like, okay, that's Michael Jackson from the Jackson 5, he went solo, it's a nice song, it's a nice video, but they was just so stuck on playing white rock music, like. And even David Bowie was like, I noticed y'all don't play no black artists. The guy was like, oh, we're sitting on white rock. And it's like, is white rock the only genre? Like, do you know how popular black music is? Other music is, R&B music is, pop music. Y'all only playing white rock artists. Like, do y'all want to make money? Or, like, what are y'all doing, right? So then it's crazy how they had to bribe and do this and do that just to get Michael Jackson on MTV. And then with that, okay, had Prince, Whitney Houston, Tina Turner, Janet Jackson eventually. Like, it's crazy what they had to go through just to get black artists on MTV. But, that was the times. Those were the times. And with the music videos, I love how Michael Jackson was blunt with, I like watching MTV. I like hearing some songs, but the music videos were terrible. When he said that, I started dying laughing because, Michael Jackson had this way of showing he was like innocent and he was nice and angelic, as people like to say. He had the soft speaking voice, but I like how you can see how candid he was in these interviews, how blunt he was. Like, these videos are terrible.
Oh my God.
And if you go look at some of these videos, pre-Thriller, even like, Michael Jackson's Rock With You or Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, those were more elevated than what they were doing. Some of these videos in the 70s and early 80s were just really terrible. They were terrible. Green screens, the artist just doing whatever. It was no story element. It was just like, okay, the backtrack of the song, the artist wearing some type of outfit, crazy hair, or it was like a live concert type of video where the music video was them performing live in a concert. It was just no thought really put into it. Michael Jackson decided to elevate the music video form, storytelling, having a song, but having a music video to match it. And then to the point where the industry caught on, was like, wow, the music video can be a promotion for the song. Not just going out and buying the records, doing this, doing that, but watching the music video on TV, that could get people better intrigued or better entertained with the artist, with the song. That make them want to go out and buy it, make it sell more records. And of course, I don't even have to get into the whole process of Thriller. I feel like everybody know the whole process of Thriller, the behind the scenes, all of that stuff, right? But I loved how they gave us that footage. I love how they packaged it together, and you could really see how Michael Jackson had this vision. Other people thought he was crazy because, the Thriller budget was like over $1 million. They said that the usual budget back then was like $50,000, and it was like, Michael Jackson, you already have Billie Jean, like the album sold millions, the most successful. You broke Guinness Book of World Records. You got to meet the president. You got to do all of this, right? But they were like, Michael Jackson was like, okay, but that's not enough. Like, you got this song called Thriller. That could be his own music video. He had this vision in his head, and I love how he was relentless. He wasn't gonna let up. He wasn't hesitant. He didn't let nobody in the company tell him, oh, okay, Michael, that's enough. No, let's wait for the next album. He was like, no. And we got Thriller, the music video. And I remember I was watching it with my mother. She was telling me just how big it was and how she learned the choreography and we was up doing it. And I just love they had it in HD. I just love that whole experience. 40 years later, you can watch that music video and you just feel the power. You feel the goosebumps from it. And this is 1983, right? But 40 years later, you can watch Thriller music video. You can watch Beat It. You can watch Billie Jean. You can listen to these records, listen to these songs, listen to the album cuts, and just feel goosebumps. That goes to show how powerful this album was, how powerful the music video was, how powerful Michael Jackson's vision was. So overall, with the Thriller documentary, I really enjoyed it. And I like how they kept it to Thriller. They gave us context, they gave us background stories of like him going through puberty and the behind the scenes stuff. And they got to show us, rare clips, rare footage. And we got to see candid interviews and hear Michael Jackson really be blunt and talk about this, talk about that, like talk about the whole process of Thriller, right? And they kept it to that. Because with a lot of these Michael Jackson documentaries, they like to say, oh, Thriller 40 years later, but then they start talking about his skin color and the vitiligo and then the allegations and then this and you're like, wait, this is supposed to be about Thriller, the album, 40 years later. Why are we talking about him having vitiligo? Why are we talking about the allegations that happened 10 years later? You know what I'm saying? And I cannot forget that Pepsi commercial, the whole thing with Pepsi, and how he didn't even really want to do that, but Don King got this promotion, got this, got that, and Michael Jackson was like, all right, I'm only going to be in the video for 3 seconds. You're only showing me for 3 seconds, and I'm not holding the Pepsi can. I don't even drink Pepsi. I don't even like Pepsi. Michael Jackson was like a big health fanatic. Like, he didn't drink soda and do all that type of stuff, right? So he was like, why would I dance around and spin around with a Pepsi can? Okay, y'all gonna pay me this much? Oh. The thing is, when they did another commercial for it, it's the whole thing where the pyrotechnics, or like the sparks, it caught in his hair caught on fire. He had the Jerry curls, so they had like the chemicals, the reaction of it just made his hair go on fire. And he had like that big bald spot, burnt spot. It damaged his scalp. And that was the beginning of him being on pain meds. And it's just like, wow, you think about it. If Michael Jackson never did that Pepsi commercial, maybe there may have been some type of thing where he wouldn't have became addicted to pain meds. Because that was 10, 20 years ago. That happened in 1983, 1984, right? But I feel like maybe, what if in 2001, 2008, 2009, that scalp burn was still affecting him? He still had to take pain medication. Because when you get burns on your arm, you heal it, but having a burn on your scalp, I feel like that's something I wouldn't know. I can only imagine. That's something that you will feel for a lifetime. Of course, over the years, it'll heal, but I feel like that pain is something that never went away. Then, of course, along with that, he had the vitiligo, and he had lupus, he had all these health complications, but I feel like it all started with that scalp burn. For a Pepsi commercial, he never even really wanted to do in the first place. So it's like, wow. But like I said, overall, I really enjoyed the documentary. I enjoyed it for what it was. Some fans have some critiques and this and that, but at the end of the day, I like how it was presented. I wish they would have interviewed certain people. I wish we would have got to see more rare footage of him actually recording the songs. Because like Thriller 40, when they had Bad 25, the 25th anniversary of Bad, they showed a lot of footage of him recording the songs and the music videos behind the scenes. But with Thriller, it was mostly like audio. I wanted to see footage. It's something about seeing the footage, seeing the process of him doing these songs, recording the songs, more behind the scenes of the music videos, like seeing all of that would have brought it all together. But a lot of it was like audio. But I enjoyed it for what it was. And this documentary further solidified how nobody No, people want to compare, but nobody can top Michael Jackson when it comes to his influence, his trend setting, his impact, his legacy, and just the fandemonium, the phenomenon, the megastar, the global influence that he was and still is all these years later. You know, people like to compare him to Chris Brown and Beyonce and this one and that one and, you know, Usher and this one. And even, I think, one of these magazines had Bad Bunny with a cover talking about the new King of Pop. They used to call Justin Bieber the King of Pop or Justin Timberlake. No, nobody can compare to Michael Jackson in the influence, the trend setting, just the way he took the industry by storm with this one album of Thriller, but just his thought process, the things he did behind the scenes that made the industry the way it is now. You know, of course, we're in the streaming era and all this other stuff, but back then, there was no streaming, there was no Spotify, there was no Apple Music, there was no downloading the song. You know, somebody download the song, you know, 1 million streams equal 500,000 sell. Like, no. People had to actually go out and buy the physical records. You had to watch the music videos on TV. You had to listen to the song, request it on the radio. So, you know, you have artists like Drake bragging about breaking Michael Jackson records, but it's like, Michael Jackson did it when there was no streaming. Streaming is 50% of the reason why you can break these records in 2023 versus 40 years ago in 1983. People actually had to really fuck with you, go out and buy your music, to the point where the factories couldn't even keep up with the shipments of how much people wanted to buy Thriller. You know what I'm saying? Like, every week, every day, Thriller was flying off the shelves. Thriller was selling 1 million copies every week at one point. Will Drake ever do that? No. This is not a thing I'm saying like, Michael Jackson is up here, every other artist is beneath him, below him, like, you know, putting Michael Jackson on a pedestal. But when you look at the records, you look at the history, you look at the impact, you look at this documentary, you look at what Thriller did, what Thriller is still doing, and if I'm not mistaken, Thriller is still on the Billboard charts today. There's no comparison. There's literally no comparison. Nothing can compare to what Thriller was and what Thriller is. And how every Halloween, you know you're going to hear this song. You know people going to dress up as him. You know you're going to see flash mobs. It's just no comparison. And I liked how this documentary tied all of these different aspects in this huge moment in Michael Jackson's career, this pivotal moment in his career where he became a phenomenon, the most successful, most famous artist in the world. Not in the country, not in America, in the world. And they, you know, told us a story. I enjoyed it. I was up dancing. I got goosebumps. You know, certain parts where you're supposed to be emotional. And I seen this all before, so I was just like, okay, I knew this was coming. I knew that. Certain things I really, 10% of it I didn't know. It was a nice surprise. Nice to see real footage. But most of this I knew, but I like how they packaged it. Even down to the part where Michael Jackson was supposed to have his own Thriller tour, but his father convinced him to go on tour with the brothers. And it wasn't funny, but it was funny to see, like, it was supposed to be a Jackson tour, but people came to see Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson basically had his brothers as like the band and the background singers. They all singing Billie Jean. This is like, Michael Jackson could have just went on tour by himself. As huge as Thriller was, he could have went on tour by himself. But, you know, the family business, and Michael Jackson was just like, okay, I got to be there for my brothers, and the father convinced him, and you know how Joe Jackson was. But overall, I really enjoyed this documentary. You saw it. If you didn't see it yet, it's on Paramount Plus, Showtime. And what are your favorite songs from Thriller? What are your favorite music videos from Thriller? And do you think Thriller is Michael Jackson's best album? To me, I'm always say his best album is Bad. My favorite songs from Thriller, PYT, Wanna Be Starting Something, and Human Nature. Those are my top 3 from Thriller. What are your favorite songs from Thriller? And what do you think about the whole Michael Jackson Thriller era? And if you saw this documentary, what do you think about it? What do you think they could have did better? What were your favorite parts? Please Let me know your thoughts down below. This should be a really fun discussion, and I can't wait to interact with y'all, read your comments, and just talk about Thriller and the phenomenon it was and still is. Please don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching and listening. I'll see y'all in the next video.